What can I say about EarthBound that hasn't already been said before? No, seriously, The Completionist, reviewed it. Zero Punctuation, reviewed it. The Happy Video Game Nerd, reviewed it. Game Theory made a theory about the darker themes of the game. You already know about it because of Super Smash Bros. What is left for me to say? You're in one of either two categories. You either played it and loved it, or you haven't played it because you're either thinking that it's overhyped by the people in the first group, or you're just neutral towards it. I was neutral towards it until I bought it last year, and I only bought it to support the people that were left high and dry outside of Japan for 18 years. But if you're here, I'm guessing you're wondering what I personally think of the game, so here are my thoughts. Here is EarthBound.
Starting with the story, let's begin with a recap of the first game, seeing as EarthBound is known as Mother 2 in Japan. And Japan also got Mothers 1 and 3 without the other games being released outside of that country. A couple named George and Maria were kidnapped to raise an alien child named Gygus. George learned how to use psychic power against the wishes of the aliens and escaped back to Earth. Years later, a matured Gygus is sent to attack Earth. He happened upon a prophecy that he would be destroyed by a boy named Ness. To disprove the prophecy, he attacks Earth earlier than he should have, but he was defeated by George's great-grandson Ninten and his friends. Gygus left, but he vowed to return. Years later, the story of EarthBound begins. A meteor crashes down on a hill in Onett, and with the other towns being named Tucson, Threed, and Forside, it is pronounced Onett, not Onet or Onet. Ness wakes up, goes to check it out, and is told by his next-door neighbor, Pokey, to go back to bed because he plans to check it out once the cops have gone. So, Ness does just that. Later that night, Ness is woken up by an annoying knock. It's Pokey, telling him that his little brother Picky went missing while exploring the meteor site. So they go to find Picky when Buzz Buzz the bee, who isn't really a bee, tells Ness that he must save the world with 3 friends. Then they're attacked by a Starman Jr., whose butt Buzz Buzz promptly kicks the crap out of. After the Starman's defeat, Buzz Buzz explains that every enemy Ness fights from now on will be from Gygus, either by evil intentions being sent into the hearts and minds of Earth creatures, or by alien creatures. Ness escorts Pokey and Picky home, Buzz Buzz gets killed by their mother, and Buzz Buzz leaves his last words, telling Ness that he has to go to the 8 sanctuaries and collect his thoughts and unlock his psychic potential to defeat Gygus. Now Ness must explore various countries and towns, from Eagle Land to the Cave of the Past, to gather his strength and defeat Gygus. Along the way, he'll make friends with Paula, a powerful psychic girl, Jeff, a boy genius, and Pooh, a mystical prince. He will also make allies of foes he's defeated and freed from Gygus' influence. However, he will continually run into Pokey, who has become rotten to the core, and is universally hated by EarthBound players worldwide. But should Pokey really be hated? This is a theory I've come up with, and I don't know if any others came up with this theory, but I'm gonna go ahead and talk about it anyway. As the one who was always the fat kid among my peers, I got to thinking about Pokey's situation. First off, he was abused at home. Even in the censored localization, the sound effect they used doesn't sound like shouting. It always sounds to me like Pokey was getting slapped. Just listen. As revealed in Magic Hand, and by how willing Pokey was to tell Ness about the meteor, it's possible that Pokey considered Ness to be his only friend. This is further proven in Mother 3, where Pokey has Ness's yo-yo in his house and labels it as the friend's yo-yo. Now imagine this. Pokey is abused at home, and he has one person who he can consider a friend. But that friend gets called away to fight an ultimate evil, and Pokey is too afraid to join him. Pokey's only friend leaves him, and now he is all alone. You can't tell me that you wouldn't be extremely depressed if you were in that situation. Then, he hears of a cult that promises to make people happy, the Happy Happyism cult. Naturally, he'd want to join. He works his way through the ranks, and because of his higher status, he gets exposed to the Mani Mani statue, a physical object through which Gygus' influence can be dispersed through the world. More and more, the statue influences him, Eventually, the statue makes its way to Forsyth and in the possession of a wealthy businessman. Pokey, still influenced by the statue, makes his way to Forsyth and becomes the new owner's right-hand man. Even after the statue is destroyed, Pokey has been so filled with the evil spirit of it that its destruction cannot change his heart. The only way you've been able to knock the evil influences out of people thus far has been to beat the sense into them. You meet up with Pokey at the very end of the game, but instead of actually defeating Pokey, you decide to defeat Gygus and let Pokey run away. In Mother 3, he is put in the absolutely safe capsule. He is unable to be hurt in there, but he can't get out. Therefore, the only way he might have been able to return back to normal is impossible. The last of Gygus' influence is sealed forever, all because you chose not to save Pokey. Oh sure, the game calls him the worst person in the neighborhood, but this was after he was influenced by Gygus. And honestly, how many kids were there in Ness's neighborhood? 4. Ness, his sister, Pokey, and Picky. And I hardly think Ness knew enough about Pokey's parents for a judgment call of worst person in the neighborhood with them being included. So in reality, you are to blame for Pokey being evil. Everything in Mother 3 is on your head. Did you even try to defeat Pokey? None of you ever had the thought cross your mind to want to give chase to Pokey, did you? Even after his note at the very end of the game, none of you thought to track him down. Pokey was a monster simply because he wanted to be happy again after you abandoned him. All of you are the monsters. Alright, that rant's over. Let's move on to the aesthetics. The dialogue in this game has received a ton of praise, and rightfully so. In so many old-fashioned JRPGs, if you get lost or confused, you have to talk to everyone. Usually it's the same old, "Aloft! Welcome, stalwart hero! Wouldst thou like to purchase a sword that is too high level for you to use?" No, instead, the game has a personality to it, and it's pretty timeless. Yes, the dialogue can be helpful, but the people here usually offer funny, quirky quips. It makes it so you aren't bored trying to figure out where you're supposed to go in the game. It also helps that the dialogue is crap we can understand, rather than being past speak or future speak, or has a lore too deep for people who didn't play Mother 1. See, the game takes place in the 90s, or relatively present day, and everything in the game reflects this. It's not potions or medkits that heal you, it's pizzas and hamburgers. If a character is defeated, they end up in the hospital. You're not using swords. Okay, one character uses the swords, but for the most part, you're using things like baseball bats and frying pans. The visual aesthetics of the creatures in the game have a nice tone to them overall. Now, I know it's taboo for one critic to call it another, but Jeff Higgins, it's clear you didn't play through the game all the way. Everything has a brighter, friendlier face, and back when the ESRB was new and didn't know what they were doing, they gave this game an E for everyone rating. So yeah, it looks like critics and the ratings boards didn't have to look at the whole game back in the day. The thing is, the light-hearted, bright tones of the game are there to juxtapose the dark moments. Being attacked by the police for seemingly no reason in a police station. Being led by a prostitute into a hotel to get the crap kicked out of you. A race of creatures being enslaved. A cult kidnapping a girl to force her to choose between being a priestess for the cult or being a human sacrifice. An ancient spirit tearing out someone's arms, legs, eyes, ears, and threatening to take their mind. And of course, Gygus! A being that appears to be like a fetus and was inspired by Shigesato Itoi's recollection of what he thought was a rape scene in a movie that he accidentally saw as a kid. Game Theory talks more about how dark the game is in detail, and you can click this annotation here to see it for yourself. But it's clear that anybody telling you that this game is too kiddie is stupid and has no clue what they're talking about and should be slapped upside the head with the nearest salmon. Then maybe shove a live lobster down their pants. The overall art style of the game, which is something else critics panned it for back in the day, still holds up in my opinion. I hold to the fact that going for photorealism will only kill the industry. And this game still holds up after almost 20 years. This game is 2 years younger than I am, and it still looks great. How many games can you think of that look great, despite the technology for over 20 years? Yeah, I can think of some, but not many. It helps how every area has a unique art style to it, helping all the areas feel unique. And it's not just a palette swap either. Each town has a different feel because of the colors, the music, and the kinds of people you find in each town. I also love how all the enemies are designed. They go from goofy to unnerving to downright horrifying as the game so desires. No, they're trying to face! Get it out of here! Get it out! Out! Also, this is how you localize a game, people. It's not just a direct translation. There's a Japanese pun that would have been used with the Iron Octopus statue in the eraser, but that wouldn't have made sense in the West. Instead, we got an iron pencil, and to remove it, we need the pencil eraser, a device that removes all pencil-shaped objects. They did that so we would get a joke that would make sense to us in English. There are a few more examples of this, but it shows how you do not just take a game made for Japan and then translate it into English and send it to America. M-O-M. The last bit I'm going to talk about is the music. Let me put it to you like this. More data space was used to store the music on EarthBound than the data used to store other entire Super Nintendo games. The music is so important to the game that you're collecting more melodies for your soundstone throughout the adventure. The music is unique but incredibly diverse, from blues to heavy metal, from melody-driven to ambiance. The sounds used to make the sounds on the Super Nintendo give the game personality as well, going just outside the traditional bleeps and bloops of older games and the string and electric guitar instruments found in other games of the time. The soundtrack set it apart from the crowd, and it still holds up today. Finally, we get to the most important part of any game, the gameplay. How do I begin? Well, it's a JRPG in an isometric world. You have a few options in combat between defending, bashing, or using psychic abilities. Each character also has unique abilities. Paula can pray and something random will happen. Jeff can spy and learn about the enemy. And Pooh can use mirror to maybe transform into the enemy, but it doesn't really come in handy that often, so you might as well just ignore it. The PSI abilities are varied for the characters. Paula is basically a master of offensive psychic abilities and shielding her allies. Pooh is good at healing, teleporting, and kind of good at offense until he gets PSI Starstorm, which is a dang good attack. Jeff doesn't learn any psychic moves, but instead he uses technology better than other characters. Ness learns a lot of healing moves, learns teleportation about halfway through the game, and PSI Rockin', or whatever you put as your favorite thing, which is rivaled by his PSI Starstorm as the most powerful attack in the game. Yes, at the start of the game you name your characters, your pet, your favorite food, and your favorite thing. You only have 5 characters for the kids though, so us people with 6-letter first names, or those with even longer, get to feel left out. However, there is a point or two in the game where it will ask for your real life name, and it gives you plenty of space for that. Items in the game work well for the characters. Jeff uses laser guns and technology, Ness uses baseball bats, Paula uses frying pans.
Frying pans! Who knew, right?
And Pooh, having been trained in the ancient ways of the Dalamese people, is weakened whenever you try to give him anything from Eagle Land. He is only powered by the royal artifacts of Dalam, including the Sword of Kings. Speaking of the Sword of Kings, there are a number of items in the game that you can only get by killing particular enemies. And those particular enemies only have a 1 in 124 chance of dropping it. This is tedious and unfun. Finding the object in a long and difficult hallway? Good. Having to rely on luck to get this item? Bad. The enemies are nicely varied, with every enemy having different stats and the potential for strengths and weaknesses, which Jeff can tell you when he spies on them. Battles aren't random though. You see enemies on the screen and you run into them, but the battles have a few major differences between them and other JRPGs. Firstly, health rolls down the number displays to 0, and if you win a battle before it goes all the way down, you can potentially survive a battle even after you've been hit by a deadly attack. The other major difference is that if you are completely overpowered against the foe you're about to battle, you automatically win because the game recognized that you had a 100% chance of victory. Something that you might have seen in the Mario and Luigi RPGs or even South Park The Stick of Truth is the ability to have an advantage when you enter the battle. If the screen goes navy blue, then it's a regular battles with equal stats. If it's red, then the enemy gets to have an opening attack. If it's green though, then you get the opening attack. It makes you want to find the blind spots of the enemy so you can attack them and get that green screen to get the opening attack. There are various status effects, including diamondization, paralysis, and poison. But more entertainingly are the status effects of kids getting cold, heat stroke, homesick, or crying. This further promotes them being kids in a real modern world scenario. That's basic weaponry and battling, but I also have to mention the exploration of the overworld. There are a few minor puzzles, some finding items to keep making progress, and talking to people to find out where to go. It's worth noting that if you see enemies, you can walk off screen and walk back to see if the game will load less enemies or no enemies at all. What's more, the entire game can be played with your left hand. Unless you're using the gamepad, in which case you will have to edit the button layout to reassign the select button. This is great because it means that I can drink Diet Coke while playing the game. Yes, Diet Coke. It should totally sponsor Mutton Shop Game Critiques. However, there is a flaw or two in terms of game design. Why is it still counted as the enemy getting a drop on me if other members of my party can clearly see the enemy? Why is this one particular stairway freaking out? Oh, and you have to love slowdown from too many freaking enemies on the screen at once. And of course, there is the ever-dreaded level grinding. This is something I normally hate about JRPGs. I know why they do it in theory. It's to make you care more about the characters. It's why rare candies in Pokemon are so scarce. If you had a bunch of them, you wouldn't care as much about the Pokemon. The issue I have is that you should be able to play through a 40-hour game and level up properly without constant grinding. Maybe have you level up properly by fighting at least one of every enemy in an area, but it's just a pain to grind. At least the game designers put in several enemies that die easily but give you tons of XP. Seriously, the caterpillars, worms, foppies, and fobbies were integral to getting to the proper levels to win. Fobby is a dead house elf. It's still tedious, but at least it makes the tedium take less time. Honestly, there's not much else to talk about in terms of gameplay, so if you'll let me divulge, I'm going to talk about the moments in the game I particularly liked. Entering Saturn Valley and meeting the Mr. Saturn and their insane typography. Fighting a boss revived by Gygus. Listening to all 8 melodies play their full song. Finding out your father's true form in the credits. The music that plays after you beat Gygus. The subtle arc of Jeff finally accepting Dr. Andonuts as his father. Pooh returning in the nick of time to save the other kids with his new ability, Starstorm. Paula praying for the power to defeat Gygus at the end of the game, which gave me chills when you have her pray for the 9th time. It took a mixture of science and religion to defeat Gygus. Developers, please take my ideas! Nintendo, it's clear from your E3 2014 videos that you know people want Mother 3. You know how much we want it, and you just say no. Look, it's obvious, but just release Mothers 1 and 3 outside of Japan already. Just call Mother 1 something like EarthBound 0. I'm sure you can convince the guys that made the slight modification into letting you use that name. Call EarthBound 2 Pokey Strikes Back in reference to Mother 2's subtitle Gygus Strikes Back. I fell in love with EarthBound after one playthrough. One. I was neutral to the game up until that point. Release those games on Wii U so I can love the rest of the series. Why the Wii U Virtual Console? So you can still spite the people that want the game but don't want to buy the Wii U because they claim it would be better on the 3DS just because the 3DS is the device they already own. That way, you can reach your quota for pissing people off, and we die-hard Nintendo fans get the games we want. Either release it for EarthBound's 20th anniversary or for Mother 3's 10th anniversary in a couple years. Just please do it.
Look, this game is a masterpiece. It gets an A+ all the way. Yes, there are those minor flaws, but they don't matter in the long run. If you have a Super Nintendo, go on eBay, buy this game. If you have a Wii U, go buy this game on the eShop right now. If you have neither, go to the store, buy a Wii U, take it home, buy this game. This is a masterpiece simply because it proves that you don't need to be having the most new and innovative gameplay ideas. All that matters is what you do with them. This game skyrocketed onto my top 5 games list of all time. And it's just that good. Please, for your own sake, play this game. That's it, and I'll see you all next week.